Awesome. Hello, everybody. I am so jazzed to be here because I have a star with us today. And her name, yes, a star, and her name is Beth Rees Jones. And together on this podcast, we are going to be talking about raising athletic, confident girls. Oh, that sounds so great to me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Beth Jones and what she has to offer, and then we'll get started with the meat of the course here today. So Beth is all about helping girls and their mom to connect to themselves through movement, nutrition, and mindset, so they can connect with their bodies and return to play. And that's what I love. I am all about play. Even my work to me is play. So I just love this topic. And I don't have any girls, so I'm going to find this very interesting. I had two boys. I raised two boys. So Beth Jones lives in Colorado, which is different from where I am. I'm out on the East Coast. So she lives with her two kids and her husband, and she enjoys being outdoors in nature, reading a great book and just cuddling up and reading that great book. And since she's very much into nutrition, she is also a great cook from what I understand, and she really enjoys cooking. So let's see, she offers retreats, coaching services, workshops, one-on-one coaching. She does a whole bunch of different things in related to this topic. So again, we're going to talk about raising athletic girls with confidence. So hello, Beth. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So love talking about this stuff. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted to, share with you and your listeners a little bit about, helping our girls really live not only athletic, but really active lives, because, sometimes we fall away from the sport, but, we're really finding that more and more girls really are needing that kind of push to be more active, in their day-to-day lives, and just starting to cultivate that wellness habit at a young age, especially over the past few years when we've had some limited opportunities to connect and move our bodies and play, as I like to say, and that you love too, because it can be really tough. And one of the things, and I had to write my notes down because it never wants to stay in my head, but one of the things that brought me to this is that I've been working more in the sports medicine and the athletic world as an athletic trainer for 20 plus years now, and then also was a teacher in the schools along with those high school athletes. And even, gosh, 15 years ago, what I was really seeing was about the time that these girls hit high school, especially after freshman year, that so many of them were just falling away from sport if they were interested and active in sport, for a number of different reasons. But a lot of the time it was because, maybe they didn't make the team, or they didn't feel comfortable that they were good enough. But the problem was there was nowhere for them to go. So it was, here's your club sports, here's your school sports, but there was no recreational option for them. And a lot of them felt like, they want to do something, but they just didn't have outlet to do anything. And so then they did nothing. And that was just a huge concern for me, just because you could see the decrease in their mental wellness because of that as well. And so I had contributed to a course, and I had looked up these numbers recently, but they say that by age 14, that girls fall away from sports about 2 times the rate of boys. By age 17, about half of girls have stopped sport altogether. And the really hard thing about that is to try to figure out the fact that they don't have anything to come to. They don't have anywhere to move their bodies. And from being a PE teacher in the schools, and we are getting more options of those health and PE classes, kind of thinking outside the box. Not all girls want to do a traditional PE class where you're playing, yeah, me too. And I loved PE, but it wasn't always my favorite thing to do. And, one of the things I was fortunate enough is we started like a yoga class at the school that I taught. And that was actually started by some teens coming to me and asking, hey, they were in a strength and conditioning class which while wonderful, that class was not great, but they kind of were like, hey, could we do a yoga class? Could that ever be an option? And so another teacher and I went and got certified so we could offer that, at the school. And, we loved it. It was mostly girls, but there's a lot of boys there too.
It's great.
Yeah. And it was wonderful. And then, being able to, offer some different clubs after school, but even like my son, who's in middle school, so he's in 7th grade this year, I've been blown away the fact that the middle school doesn't have any after school clubs for the kids. They do have some sports options, but a lot of them, except for like the running, the cross country and track, have limitations on how many can join. When I reached out to the local rec center about wanting to come in and offer something, I was met with a lot of resistance. They didn't have really any interest in that. And it just made me so sad. Because, we are seeing this rise of anxiety in girls, of just being able to get out there. And I work with some now and we talk about, well, what's causing the anxiety? And they don't even know. It's just a constant state of anxiety that they're in anymore. And there's no outlet for them. I think, and are like me, that just kind of somatic awareness of being able to move those emotions through your body, that just feels so good. And so, that's supporting them, on this, physical level, but also at a mental level as well. And then establishing these good habits as they move into adulthood and things get crazy.
Yes.
To be able to have that to fall back on. And of course, we're seeing, more concerns with obesity and chronic diseases and even autoimmune things with our girls, which I just firmly believe if we had these opportunities to move our bodies and to connect, then, that's the first step in really helping them, if not move past some of this, at least be able to manage it in a much
totally
healthier.
Agree.
Yeah. But yeah, and then, along with that, I think most of us, when we have that autonomy to be able to participate in sport, number one, I did my master's thesis way a long time ago, looking at how academic performance was affected by people who participated in extracurricular activities. It focused a lot in sport, but it also brought in other activities as well. I mean, there's a correlation there. The kids who are doing extracurricular activities, especially sport, are doing better in the classroom because they have that ability to have a connection with people, and that connection and knowing that you have somebody that cares about you, that bolsters your confidence, that you have a voice, which I think is another thing. Although I spoke to a group of teen soccer players just last week, and they were all I will say they were pretty good with their voices and speaking out for themselves. And it was such a blessing to see that.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. And I think that, having that community and being able to have that control of your body and knowing what feels good in it, that does move over into our confidence in our girls being able to tell people, being able to know, yes, this feels good to me. No, I don't like that. Not feeling like they can physically protect themselves and just, form their bubbles and things like that, and really step into their authentic selves instead of, falling so much into what we see in social media and from our peer groups, and even, from the adults in our lives who are just raised and have different mindsets than they do.
I just love this concept.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
how do you approach this with your coaching and some of the services that you do? How do you integrate all this information that you
Yeah.
provide them with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's really two ways to do it because I have two people that come. I had the parents that come to
Mhm,
me and are like, my kid isn't working, isn't moving, they're not working out, they're not doing X, Y, and Z, and very, concerned about that, which is great that they, having that concern and
mhm,
coming. But then I also have the teens who actually will come to me and say, I want to be able to do this better. And so it really depends on who it is. But
mhm,
a lot of the time, especially since we have probably a lot of parents listening into this, when the parents come and are really looking for ways to get their kids moving more, I find it's really funny because most of us as adults, we come to moving and being active and athletic as either being involved in a sport or doing traditional exercise like going to the gym. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of teens, especially girls, really don't want to go to the gym. They don't know what to do. They
mm,
don't like being on display and people
mhm,
looking at them.
mhm,
And a lot of that comes back also to the physiology of all of the changes that they're going through during
mhm,
adolescence,
mhm,
not only hormonally, but their bodies are changing. And, as a PT that, the biomechanics of just moving your body.
mhm.
And especially in girls, all of a sudden our center of gravity changes and we're
Yes.
awkward and things. And it's just an uncomfortable place to be. And then the fear of, oh my gosh, would I start my period or can I do these things while I'm on my period? And it's just not a comfortable place for a lot of girls to be. So I usually start by, asking parents to step away from these more traditional concepts of exercise and fitness and athletics and instead start having the conversations or looking for easy ways to get the girls active again. So some of that is simply an invitation for a walk. you
Mhm,
know let's go for a walk after dinner, after between school and study time, encouraging them to go out even on their own for a walk. So I know this isn't a girl, but I have a 13-year-old son who is a little reluctant to move his body, and we're like, go take the dog for a walk, just go get out for a little bit. And he's usually okay with that. But um and then the other part of it, and this is where the play comes in, is think about, what did your kids like to do when they were younger?
mhm,
Before kind of that realization of, oh, maybe some of the things that weren't very cool anymore. What did they like to do to play when they were younger? And how can you fit a more mature version of that, into your life now? And so, looking at non-traditional exercise, whether it's hiking or going to a climbing gym, or as silly as it seems, going to the playground and just being silly
mhm,
there. Um, you know, like my son, like I've had my son and then some other kids in there, like trying things like archery or parkour. What is available out there that they could go take a lesson in, you know, that would be something different that aligns to, ways that they used to naturally move their bodies when they were little,
mhm,
because there's probably a core piece of them that still connects to that.
mhm.
And so that's really where I start, and we,
Yeah.
start brainstorming. And then I do love talking to the kids too, because a lot of the times they'll start telling me things that they like to do, and it's like, okay,
Mhm.
well, let's try that. Let's
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that. And so it's, as we know, especially going into adolescence, and I know I remember this from being a teen myself, but when you try to push something sometimes on your team, you're going to get pushed back.
Yeah. It doesn't
And
work.
so, yeah, this whole thing of making them come down and work out with you. Okay, well, they may not want to do that. You can
Mhm,
always, I used to have a saying, the invitation to play. Always invite. Hey, do you want to come do this with me? No? Okay. Anytime you're welcome to come do that.
mhm,
Another really great way is to find some of their friends, because it's very, very vulnerable to go into a situation, especially as an adolescent, I think by yourself, that's new. And so if you can collaborate with friends and friends' parents to say, what is something that they might want to do together, then that's a much safer place to go do that. Even if they hopefully will meet some new people there and expand their, social network, to be able to, do that with a friend and have a little bit of a safety net. And then the last thing is really have that brainstorming conversation with your teen, but let them do the talking. And it may not happen in the first conversation. This may be a series of conversations that, need to be had. And along with that is when they are talking, telling their day, telling the stories, really sitting there and listening. And what are those things that you could pick up? I'd be like, oh, and, maybe not jump on them right away, but kind of like, oh, let me see. She kind of mentioned she really enjoyed going to the dance. Let me see what kind of dance type opportunities there are out there for kids and things like that. But, that's the hard thing. It's not a straightforward thing. It's very hard to just say, yeah, do X, Y, and Z, and suddenly our kids are all going to be moving and active and healthy and happy. But I think that if we get out of their way a little bit and start listening to what they're telling us and what they like to do, and then also encouraging them, but also step into our roles of parents of setting boundaries around some things. Because I know, again, sometimes in our home, I have kids. I have one, my daughter, who's just turned 10, so she's on the early age of tween. She's my active one. I can get her to go do anything. My son, who is almost 13, is a little more resistant. He really loves being on his computer and on the games.
I was just going to have a conversation with you about that. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's so different than when we were younger. I was in the era that go outside and play, and I'd be on my gymnasium in the backyard, and we'd be running around and chasing one another out in the yard. And I just don't see the kids doing that as much as they used to. So much of them are on the computer, playing the games, whatever else they're doing, socializing on the computer.
There are. And I think, and, you brought that one point, the socializing piece up there. And I will say, that piece, we can't overlook it. It isn't like no computer time, but how can we put boundaries around that? Because there is a social element that some of these kids will, that might be the biggest way that they kind of socialize. And, we don't want to totally cut that off. And so, at our house, we have a 2-hour computer time, and we have things that are set up around that to shut it off after that time. And also on the phone, he can get text, and our kids can get, well, my daughter doesn't have a phone, but she has an iPad that can do text and things, so they can get some text sometimes around there or in between those time. But as far as being on the computer or on his phone to play games, those are shut down then. And then the rules around that is, what else do you still need to do in your day? Do you need to do some homework and get that done? Have you moved your body today? And the funny thing is when you shut that down, that more inner play nature comes back out again.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
And sometimes it's getting outside, but sometimes it's, suddenly finding random dress up things when you're a middle schooler in your room and suddenly running around the house with them. And that's play, and that's moving your body. That's not sitting down watching TV or in front of the computers. And then sometimes depending on, really what's happened during that day, then we'll say, that was awesome. You have a friend who's going to be online. Okay, now you can have a little bit more time to play. But we also try to really limit the amount of time too after that 2 hours where he's just on to be on and he's not connecting socially with people as well. But around that, one thing we did, and again, this is straying from the girls, but it could definitely, we did it with my daughter. We knew that, my son was connecting with some people at school and connecting online. And so we took the time as parents to say, hey, why don't you invite all your friends, and we're going to go and we'll host a night at the trampoline park. And that's what we did.
That's
On
great.
a Saturday, we invited friends. They went to and did, my poor husband went on that one. Like 4 hours they were at the trampoline park, but that was 4 hours. He was up and running around and connecting with friends and doing all that kind of stuff. Taking advantage of the spirit nights at your kids' schools. So, we have skating rink night, at the school here. There's dances, really, being informed. And I can say this as a former teacher and a parent is, those emails come through, and a lot of times we're like, whatever, don't have time to read this, but give it a little bit of a read just to see what's going on. Because if you can get your kid to go out to those events, even if they're a little bit more introverted, really encouraging them to give it a try. That's just another opportunity for them just to get out, move their body, connect with friends.
Yes.
That bolsters their confidence because they're stepping outside their comfort zone in a lot of cases, and not too far, into that way stretch zone, but, just into that not sure zone. But being able to do that and then having a positive experience with it, oh my gosh, that confidence just raises straight up.
Yes.
And brainstorming activities like that as well is what can you do? Can they, can you go out if you don't feel like hosting people out? What can you do as far as bringing kids into your home or to a park or something like that where they can go do things?
Yeah. Now you live out in Colorado, so I make up your culture out there is more about being outdoors than, let's say, at New York City or living in Boston. So I
Yeah.
would imagine that's helpful in some respect, that it's more of a cultural thing, I believe.
I think so, but I think also Colorado kind of gets that idea that there is like everybody's outside skiing and hiking and everything like that. And that's
it's
not
not
always the
everybody.
case.
Yeah.
And I actually laugh because we live just southwest of Denver,
Okay.
right near some local trails and things, but the opportunities, especially for like these adolescent kids, to be able to be parts of groups that get outside, there's very limited ones. And I've looked, there's some more, there's like the really young side, the preschoolers and things like that, but the middle and adolescent, there's not as much. Summer camps and things like that, but then those also tend to be expensive, and so some people can't always do that. But yeah, the opportunities are here, and that's one thing, we push and say, get out, let's go do these things. But yeah, sometimes it can be challenging, as it would be, out where you are in urban areas, to really find opportunities for them. And that's one of the things that is close to my heart, and I hope to be able to somehow encourage or bring, resources to, is, having these opportunities for these kids, girls, boys, to be able to connect, get outside, connect, and but also, relieving the parents a little bit of having to lead all of those opportunities. And I think, kind of comes back to what you were talking about when we were growing up. We just went out, rode our bikes, and there was no cell phone. And I know my mom knew I was somewhere in the neighborhood at the time, but I grew up in Oklahoma, so there was a lot of just undeveloped land around, where not anymore, but when I was growing up there was. So who knows where I were, but the culture is different. And it's like, number one, if you have somebody like my husband and I who are more likely to say, yes, you can go down to the park. We live in a part that they can't go too far just because of where our neighborhood is. But they can go around the neighborhood and down to the park and things like that. But there are kids in the neighborhood whose parents aren't comfortable with them doing that. And so that's another really hard thing when I don't think that they have anymore the whole mindset from parents and of the kids of, oh yeah, no, I can do that. I'll meet you there. It's just not there as much anymore.
Shifted, definitely.
And I know that we try to provide that for my son. It's like, if you want to go somewhere, if you want to, go meet up with friends somewhere and do something, I'm in. Give me some times and stuff. We'll make sure the timeline works, but I'm here to help achieve that for you. because
awesome.
that's how much, we've made ourselves available to get our kids active. And I think that's the other thing that parenting, and it's very hard for parents too. And so, for us being able to say, how can we look at our own social circles and connections to say, hey, could you take the kids on, forming carpools again and things like that to help out. Yeah, and especially if you're in a family with multiple kids who, maybe they, you have one who's involved in all the activities and the other one, stretching, and you're trying to figure out how the heck you can be in two places at the same time. But I can say personally, it's challenging, but doable. Usually you can figure that out.
Yeah, and ask other parents too, we'll carpool this time and then next time, trying to get all the different kids at different places.
Yeah, and I found
it takes a village.
Exactly. And I think some of us hesitate to do that because the parents are new to us and we are kind of scared to go out there and ask. But I have found personally that most of the time when I have reached out, forming some of these basic friendships with, parents and the activities that my kids are, that a lot of them are like, yeah, no, I'd be happy to do that.
Definitely.
And meeting halfway. And I think that's the last thing, but even our kids watch what we do. They listen to what we say. And so, that's the final thing, it kind of that invitation, and then showing by example. If they're seeing that you're going out of your way to support them in moving their body, and you're trying new hard things as well, because your kids know if that's something you do or not. Then that gives them confidence as well to be able to step forward and ask. And they can, especially as we move into middle school and things, that's a great time to give them, gosh, what a great way to promote confidence is through responsibility and taking action, saying, yeah, hey, reach out to your friends, here's kind of our timeline, figure out what's going on, who do we need to pick up, who's meeting us there, where are we, that kind of thing, and putting it in their hands to be able to figure out. And then their friends can be like, yeah, what we really want to do is go to the park, and just hang out. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Go to the park and hang out. And that's the first step. So.
And from personal experience, it's so different from one school to the other, because I was raised in Buffalo, New York, and at our school we had swimming, we had gymnastics, we had all these things inside. I'm not talking about the external things, sports after school and stuff, but our gymnasium time was involved in all these different things. Then I moved to Southern Illinois, where our exercise time was calisthenics outside on the basketball court. And that was basically it. We didn't really do too many things inside. There wasn't a big gym to do anything inside. So that's what we did. So it was totally different. So depending on where you're at, they might not have anything at all. There might not be funding anymore for doing those kind of things at school.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because that's just it, is, the funding for PE is going down in the schools. And I know that, gosh, when I was teaching and I left the classroom almost 10 years ago, I think they only had to have 1 or 2 semesters of PE as a graduation requirement. And so, once they got through that 1 semester, maybe 2 semesters, then that was it. They didn't have to do it anymore. And then even then, as a PE teacher, I had often 50 students in my class. And
that's a lot.
It's a lot of students and
a lot of energy.
It's a lot of energy, but at the high schoolers, it's also, a lot of kids who decide, well, they don't want to, that's the other thing. They don't participate because they don't want to dress out. They don't want to have to change their clothes. For a myriad of reasons, embarrassment in the locker room, just not wanting to be seen in clothes that are not, who they are, their identity, and things like that. And so I can remember several times, kids just basically choosing to almost take a 0. I never gave a 0 if they showed up, but choosing not to lose points on participation just because they did not want to move their body. And you can imagine I was pretty lenient on what participation looked like in my classes. So really lost it if your choice was to sit, by the wall and literally sit out. That's when it became a problem. But, even the kids who have conditions and things where maybe they can't fully participate in. And again, it's going to depend on talking about teachers and coaches and the adult who's doing these things, really on their personality and their creativity levels sometimes. But at the same time, and I will always say this again and again, if you have a kid who's trying to be active and they're running into obstacles even at school or in the classes where they can't be because of XYZ, as a parent, reach out to that teacher and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I probably can count the number of parents who reached out to me over the years and yet they were frustrated. As again, show that, because I'm pretty creative and I can come up with something that your kid can do and have fun with, that is within, their capabilities and abilities. So, and that's part of the fun of it.
Definitely.
Too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the kind of what it comes down to, around that whole idea of keeping these girls, active and confident is, I'll go back, for us to be creative as parents and kind of tap in and to tap into their creativity. And when I say creativity and movement, it is that more of that idea of play, looking outside what I call the traditional exercise / gym box. If you can find, if they love sports, if they want to try a new sport, encourage that and see if you can find a program for them, because some sports, they do have introductory levels for like middle school and high school. Some don't, but look around, see what's available. Just really encouraging them to get out there and try some new things, and then use your kind of parental push, not so much for, you need to go exercise, you can't go do anything until you've been on the treadmill for 30 minutes. Instead of using those type of restrictions, use your boundaries around things like screen time that are easy to get sucked into, because they do give us that dopamine and things like that. And once they start moving their body and get a different type of natural release of dopamine,
exactly,
then they'll probably want to do more of that as well.
Yes. Well, I have just really enjoyed this conversation and spending time with you. And I want people to be able to know where to find you and to tell them about what you have to offer.
Sure.
It's so important.
Yeah. Well, my main website, it's really easy. It's just bethjonescoaching.com. And that's kind of my main site. From there, I have kind of a subsite that is more athletically minded called The Nourished Athlete, but you can find the link from there. And then I also have a free Facebook group. So if you just look up Raising Active, Confident Girls, you'll find it. It's pretty easy on that one. And then my offerings, as you mentioned, I do one-on-one coaching, and I really try to keep that affordable, because I do want to be able to give that. And I always offer a free discovery call, and you can find information on how to set that up on the website. And then one of the things that we're coming up on is really starting to set up some more kind of education and classes and ways to connect through membership. And I have a little community called The Playground. And it is growing, but you can find out how to get on the list for as that starts launching. And really what that is going to be is a hub for all of us, both as parents and as kids, to be able to connect. And from there, having online events, having maybe some in-person events, as you mentioned, hopefully moving into retreats and things like that. And then finally, if you work with a group of teens, whether it be, more like a community, like a social group, something like that, like Girl Scouts or a youth group or something, or of a sports team, I love coming and doing presentations on different topics around wellness. And that can be if you're in Colorado, Denver area in person, but we can also do those virtually as well. So,
And I know
yeah.
the last time that we spoke, you were also very much into nutrition and
Yes.
supporting the girls around nutrition. So how much of
Yes.
that are you still doing? How are you
Oh, that's
incorporating
a
that into
lot
the
of,
program?
that's actually probably the majority of what I do. What I do is I talk a lot about wellness in general, but nutrition is a big, big key point of that, because along with moving the body, I just feel like, and part of that came even from the feedback I used to get when I was teaching from these girls, not understanding truly how to nourish their bodies, but wanting to. So yeah, I do a lot of that. So I do that in my one-on-one coaching for sure. And I should mention that the way I approach that is much more individual and holistically. So if your kid isn't going to come to me and suddenly get some strict meal plan of X many calories and macros and things, that's not how I work. We really kind of
That's
need to
it.
shift away. And instead of coming in with some good habits and then looking how that food not only nourishes them for their, I mean, we're going to be honest, the aesthetic kind of
Mhm.
look that all girls and women tend to have, but then moving beyond that, and how does that make you feel? How does it fuel your body? How does it make you feel mentally and physically and things like that? And so that's a lot of the coaching I do. So I do that in one-on-one. Also going to be bringing in some more educational kind of, programs and courses and videos around that.
Mhm.
And if anybody has a group, of a few girls are interested, we always look at a group coaching program, just still growing right now, but that's
That's
where it's
awesome.
going.
Yeah, I can say as a dancer when I was younger, I had no clue around nutrition. I thought a good nutrition thing would be back in the day at Burger King or across the street from where I went to college, they had a salad bar. Well,
Yeah,
there wasn't much on the salad bar that had protein. And then I would
right.
try to go to a dance class, or I'd say, well, today I'm going to be healthy and get a fish sandwich
Yep.
at
Yeah,
Burger
no.
King. Well, that's not really healthy
Yeah,
either. So,
yeah,
and then I was a model on top of it, and they wanted you to be skinny and all that kind of stuff.
exactly.
So, talking about all these different things, and for the teenagers to know what to do to make their
Yeah,
bodies healthy, to have the energy to participate in sports, to go outside and play or
right.
whatnot, is just so important. The information just was not there. It was what the pyramid back when I was growing up.
Yeah, and they have the plate now, but it's still it's not great. It's better than it was. It's still
Yeah,
not great. I mean,
yeah.
too, for just an example, I spoke to a group of high school soccer players last week, and the presentation was supposed to hit on uh, nutrition, mental health, and then we talked a little bit about our cycles and things and how that actually factors into both nutrition and mental health and performance. But we spent most of the presentation only talking about nutrition, and I still have a list of like at least 10 or more questions that I need to go back and answer for them
Mm,
that we didn't have time for.
mhm.
I mean, our girls know that there's better information about nutrition out there, but they just don't have access to courses and to even like social media. I've heard, of people, of information of how to get that really good understanding of what to eat, how to eat, shifting, what does that mean? Because there's just too much noise out there. And so that actually is really one of my main um focuses, is to be able to educate those girls about that. And I had a great time when I was teaching online over the first year, giving those lessons. So now it's just a matter of, I'm in the process of kind of revamping those lessons for my business instead of for school use. So those are coming.
Good.
And I
Something
hope,
to look
yeah,
forward
people,
to.
yeah, if they join my email list, those information things will be coming out when those are available and ready. So, yeah.
Well, this has been such a pleasure speaking
Thank
with
you.
you today, and I'm so glad you're sharing this information that's so important, both for the teenagers, hopefully they are listening, the girls are listening, and their parents also. And to have them connect and do some of these things together, learn together, grow together. And
Yeah.
again, it's about the connection with
Right.
with
Right.
the parents and the kids.
Yeah.
So until next time, I am going to thank you again. And I'm just going to tell everybody out there to please get in touch with Beth if you have any questions, if you want to join any of her programs, learn more about nutrition, and keep smiling. So I hope everybody has a good rest of the day, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.